This episode is sponsored by ShoutOUT, a two-way text messaging and campaign management platform that provides analytics and facilitates conversational messaging that delivers, engages, and converts more. Send personalized campaigns from unique phone numbers to the message content itself, letting you brand your campaign to promote yourself and create your messages in a way that users are made to think you sent it personally for them. You can then monitor and improve your campaigns over time with real-time analytics. Start reducing messaging and campaign costs with cost-effective bulk SMS. Scale efficiently without having to worry about high costs. If you'd like to start using mass texting services with simple packages to choose from, visit getshoutout.com today. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Akil Jabbar, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS District. In today's episode, we'll be talking about how to master the perfect B2B pricing strategy for your SaaS. Today, we have our guest, Marcos Rivera, joining us. Marcos is the founder and CEO of Pricing.io, a company that helps growth stage B2B SaaS companies design the perfect pricing, shifting from guesswork to framework and getting ready to scale up. So welcome, Marcos. Super excited to have you on the SaaS District show today.
Hi, Akil. Super excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So I want to just getting started about mistakes that people make. Right now, before we get into strategies and frameworks, which you talk about, what do you typically see as being some of the most common mistakes that you B2B SaaS companies make when setting up their pricing and their offering?
Absolutely. So one of the key things that I see with a lot of companies that I work with is that they're trying to find a magic number. Okay, they want to know what that perfect price point is in the model, and it really is more about monetizing the right value for the right audience at the right time, and trying to influence that behavior with the model. And so it's really bigger than just the number. The number is oftentimes the last thing you figure out in your pricing.
So if I'm trying to think of, obviously you need a number that need to show and reveal to your customers. So what are some of the main factors that you look at? So besides some of the, this is my expenses, this is what my costs are going to be. What else is really influencing the price of the product? Is it the perception? Are you looking at competition and then basing it off of that?
Yeah. So what you do is you take a bigger step back and you ask yourself, how are you going to grow? Right. The big question is the growth coming from going down market, going up market, cross-selling and upselling to your own base. And how do you want to pursue those different growth paths for the year? The pricing model supports those different growth paths. And so you step back and you think about, well, if I need to move down market, to use that example, then I want a lower friction, good entry level pricing to bring folks in. And so that's the basis of any good pricing model, is understanding those paths first and foremost. And then you begin to look at, great, well, based on that, who do we want to win and who do we not want to win for our customers? Then from there, if you get that very clear picture of those different bases, you then go to the last piece, which is, okay, what kind of experience do we want to give them? And that's what you price at the end of it. So those big factors come into play after you figure out the first two. What do we want and who do we want to win first?
I feel like that last one is maybe not talked about as much as I've typically heard, which is the experience. And how do you quantify that, right? You can go, as big as possible or, as minimal as possible. And how do you kind of bake that in and factor that? Can you give some examples of what you
Sure, absolutely. So one of the reasons why I use the term experience is to step away from the idea that I'm selling a list of features, right? Or just a set of capabilities in a software. It also should include how they find you, how they sign up, how they pay, onboarding, training, support, and all those things come together to build the experience. And the experience is aligned very closely to the types of customers you want to win. So customers that maybe they're not ready for the full experience, they're just getting their feet wet, then you can give them a very lightweight experience, very low friction. And that is something that you price typically in a more competitive environment than you would an experience for a large company who is ready for full transformation to get full into the software and needs a lot more training and handholding as a result. And that's how you start from there.
Got it. So yeah, it depends how involved you are and how much support they need and whatnot is what you're essentially saying, right?
Exactly.
And so at what point are founders, typically coming to you for help? And what does that a typical aha moment in the process of helping them discover that their pricing can be optimized? What does that journey look like when they're talking to you?
Absolutely. So when folks reach out, it's typically because they're expanding their portfolio or they're expanding their market or their TAM. So typically what they're doing is they're either acquiring another company or they're moving to a different part of the TAM, maybe moving up market to sell enterprise or going down market to capture more of the SMB or micro SMB. And what they find is that the model starts to break down. They start seeing a lot of complexity between the plans. They start seeing a lot of discounting to win deals. They start seeing longer sales cycles and different things like that start to manifest. And they realize, I think we need to step back and relook at how we're monetizing value, look at our pricing and packaging. So that's the most common point when folks reach out.
Makes sense.
And as far as the aha moment is concerned, you asked me that as well. The aha moment usually is when we're stepping through, similar to what I just mentioned a minute ago, when they're asking me, Marcos, how much should we charge? What's the magic number? And I say, wait, let's step back before we get to the magic number. How are we going to craft the right experience for the right audience so you can grow and meet your objectives? And at that point, they say, oh, wait a second. That's a much different way to look at it. I never thought about it that way. And that's when we start opening things up.
Got it. And then obviously pricing it, the actual number wise is one piece of the overall monetization strategy. And then the other part of it is, what are we charging for versus when to charge, right? I mean, typically you've seen smaller, B2B market focused. If you're going, lower market, you're doing upfront, charging on your credit card on a monthly basis. And then, sometimes with enterprise, you're charging, 60 days out, you're getting invoiced and whatnot. How do you kind of look at that factor into it?
Yeah, I mean, those all factor into the monetization model itself. And the way you think about it, if you're experiencing a very large, fulsome product, and it's something that you're able to access over time pretty consistently, and you're able to grow into it, that experience dictates the different types of models, meaning you look more likely have something that's predictable, flat subscription basis to be able to monetize that experience appropriately. Then again, if you had something where you're more seasonal usage, or it's highly consumption oriented, whether it's something that's a transaction, an API call, an email, and so on, or it's data volume driven, then you start to think, okay, if the experience is really around the tech, and the tech is just a mechanism to get the throughput, again, going back to API calls and transactions, then some type of usage-based model is going to be more appropriate. And if the industry, depending on how your competitors charge, how your customers are ready to pay, sometimes you need a hybrid of both. And so how you monetize, whether it's on a per transaction basis, flat basis, or the hybrid of the two, is a big part of the monetization strategy overall.
And do you also think about, charging on a monthly basis versus annual versus quarterly? How do you think about that into the pricing? Does that change?
That absolutely does change. And when you think about it here, most of the time, larger deal sizes tend to lend themselves better to annual or multi-year agreements. You also want to think about how long it takes the customer to get up to speed and start experiencing the value, right? So if they're able to get the value very, very quickly, then shorter terms tend to be more common. If it takes a good 4 to 6 months to even get up and running in the software, then you typically don't want to go any sooner than an annual commit. And then more than likely 2 to 3 year commitments are even more appropriate for that stage.
Right. So thinking about your time to value for when it makes sense for them to pay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
What about publishing pricing on their website and revealing pricing upfront? So I'm typically a fan, revealing that, but also some people like to go through the demo process. I guess it needs a sales cycle for them to fully understand the value. What do you typically think of that, and how do you should every company publish it?
This is probably one of the top questions I get from an audience, whether or not they should publish their pricing. And there's a big movement towards pricing transparency. If you look today versus 10 years ago, how many companies publish their pricing? It is far more common for, let's say, the B2C type of business to publish, and B2B is making their way there as well. And so I look at it this way. I think there's different degrees of transparency. You don't have to always go and publish everything on the website, particularly if you have big deals that are six figures, that tend to have a lot of services negotiated with it, multi-year relationships. Those things are better off with a good conversations, deeper discovery, and coming up with a price that's appropriate for what they want. But if you're looking at something that is more self-service, product-led, typically you're spending less than a couple $100 a month, then it's very commonplace to publish your pricing there. Oftentimes, if you're on the fence and don't know which way to go, I always recommend just publish your packages at first and then slowly begin to reveal the price points as your model and your overall comfort level around the price dictates.
So if you're is there like a point where it doesn't make sense, like in terms of dollar amount? If you're charging 100 versus 1,000 versus 10,000 a month, is there a point where you think it's not worth it?
I do. I think that if your deal sizes, if you're just a couple $100 a month, let's just say 5,000 a year overall spend, you're more than likely going to have to publish your pricing. Your competitors are probably doing it. The consumers are typically reading and making decisions right there on the webpage. They're entering free trials, things like that. Those are going to be your scenarios where you should be publishing your pricing to give them the transparency they need to make a decision at that point. But if I would say anything above $50K a year in ACV or in contract value, you start to think, well, up there, you can see bigger deal sizes evolving into six-figure deals. In those cases, you don't necessarily need to publish everything on the page. I like to do this. I like to publish your packages, and then what is the driver? What are the different drivers of the pricing, such as, hey, we price based on number of users, number of transactions, number of reports, whatever that is. And that way, at least the consumer knows, okay, when we get on the phone, these are the things that are going to drive the price up or down.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's very, very rare that somebody will sign up right away when they see, $50,000, pricing plan on their website, right?
That's right. Yeah. Usually at that stage, it does happen now and again to see it in the 10 to 25K range, because some companies are even putting that on a credit card more often today than they have 5-10 years ago. But when it comes to 50, 75, 100K or higher, it's more likely going to go down the path of a demo, a discovery discussion, and then final pricing after that. Yeah,
makes sense. And then how does anchoring kind of affect that model in terms of overall sales, right? Because you have the different pricing structure set up. How do you look at that piece of it?
I think anchoring is a huge, impactful psychological trait when it comes to pricing. And so we as human beings are always comparing something to something else. That's just the way we're built in our nature. And so what you'll find is that you have different anchoring effects of a larger plan next to a smaller plan, which makes the smaller plan feel a lot more reasonable. And so using those techniques to better frame the pricing is very, very useful when it comes to sales. But even more common is you can actually anchor with any number against any number. That's what folks forget. So you could say something like, we process 15 million emails a day. We start at $3 a month, right? And so now that $3 feels so low compared to the 15 million, even though it's not a price to price comparison. So you could frame it a little bit to make your pricing seem more reasonable to consume.
And then you speak about something called the forking method. This is something I've never heard about in the past. Can you maybe share a little bit what that is and how we can use it?
Sure. I mean, when it comes to pricing models and packaging, you're always trying to balance simplicity and flexibility, right? You're trying to keep it simple to buy, to sell, but also flexible so you can monetize different types of value as the customer gains more value. And so one way that companies achieve this balance is using what's called the forking technique, where if you think about as you're driving down a road and you hit a fork in a road, you can go left, you can go right. What they're doing, instead of displaying every plan possible on their pricing page, is they're asking you, are you a consultant? Are you an agency? Are you looking for this? Are you looking for that? And then based on that selection, move you to a different sets of pricing. So you could have a lineup for pricing for one audience and then another lineup for the other, and keep the messaging and positioning also very well targeted.
Interesting. Are you showing this directly on the website?
Yes. So the forking method can be shown right there when you click on the pricing page, which qualifies which one are you. Are you this type of buyer or that type of buyer? And then once you click there, you then self-select into that row of pricing. So a great example of this, for instance, is MailChimp, who recently changed their pricing last year. When they changed their pricing, everyone saw their lineup. But now with the forking method, you can choose, I want to see the marketing platform. I want to see email transaction only. I want to see pricing for websites and e-commerce, and they're all different pages. And so you just qualify yourself and then move to those pages and see that. So that way you don't get exposed to something that's not really relevant to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. One part, I guess, we have a lot of people in the audience who have, the freemium or, maybe even the free trial model where they're focusing on SMBs. And they're trying to think, how much should we, obviously the idea of the freemium is more on the product-led growth strategy where you're getting people to sign in, use the product, and then, convert to a paid customer. But then you have to kind of limit how much is too much, right? Because obviously there is some cost to what you're offering them and usage of your product. How do you help them determine what is the right amount of access when they're, on the free plan and not paying anything?
Yeah, that's always a tricky one because it depends on sort of the usage patterns. But I'll give you a couple things here because when it comes to free trial or freemium, generally speaking, you're trying to give them a taste of the value. Software is always a promise of value. You actually don't get any value until you start using it. And so when you step into a free trial or freemium, generally speaking, you're looking for a couple things. One is, is a free trial converting around 15% or so to paid? And then from a freemium perspective, are around 7 or 8% of that audience converting over to paid? If you're seeing less than that, in the freemium example, if only 1% moving over to paid and 99% never pay you, then you might be giving away a bit too much value. And that could look like, for example, giving them unlimited storage, giving them unlimited history. It could be trying to give them unlimited parameters around users, or giving them more premium or advanced either integrations or personalization or customizations. These are things I really try to avoid giving in a freemium experience. A freemium experience generally gets them to a very nice, noticeable point of value. But as they want to extend and deepen in maturity, expand in complexity, that's where they need to move up and start to pay for the solution.
And beyond just the amount of value and access you're giving them, is there any other secrets or tips you can help people? If they are below that 5-6%, let's say they're only converting 2 or 3% of the users into paid customers. What else can we do to help push some of those users into being paid?
Yeah, one of the big ones I always look at is taking a look at the pattern and the histogram of the feature usage. And so one of the things is when you're offering a freemium product, you're generally giving the customer a test drive. And so as they're going through there, what you're looking for is what features do you see start to climb over a 2 to 6 month period. So the reason why you want to start measuring there is typically month number 1, they're starting to get used to the product and may not have felt the value just yet. Month number 2, maybe they're feeling the value, but Akil, they're now expanding and making a habit out of it. And as human beings, we take a few months before we start making habits. Then months 3, 4, 5, and 6, that's when we start seeing, okay, what usage goes up in that period, and are we limiting that enough or creating a good drop-off threshold such that a good percentage of those can start moving into the paid tier. So this is something where a company like Calendly does really well, where they limit you to one meeting type, but as you start to expand and want to have more advanced meeting types later, which happen after you build a habit of using Calendly, that's where you begin to pay.
And how about the people who sign up and maybe don't ever get through into using it enough? Is that more just on the onboarding and trying to communicate with them more to get them to use it, or your onboarding flow, or any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so folks that just come in and either use and drop or use on a very sporadic or periodic basis. So what you're finding there in those cases is typically getting them to that aha moment or that point where they realize, wow, my life is much better with this than without this. And that point can be very different for different types of software. But generally speaking, the onboarding experience and getting them to that point, whether it's through nudges using email or with an in-app, which works even better than email, in-app nudges to get them to a certain point, either with dummy data or some type of a series or sequence of tests to get them to feel that value. That's going to help address some of those early drop-offs. Because nowadays, especially with product-led and self-service, you're finding that the tolerance for trying to figure something out is really low. And so investing that in success is going to help increase that throughput.
So just try to make it as simple, as easy as possible to use. And yeah, makes sense.
Yes, within the application itself, like almost giving them a sequence to follow and getting them there and them directly.
Yeah, it sounds like intuitive. People think, they'll figure it out. There's some buttons here, but you literally have to, walk them through it like they're, talking to your mother or something like that, right?
Exactly right. So you'll find that most people won't put in the effort for that.
Yeah, that's true. Cool. Marcos, this has been fantastic. We're going to shift gears here and start the part of the episode where we talk about, more of the personal, a little bit more rapid fire questions. So you ready for that?
Sure. Shoot away.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it. All right. What's one activity you enjoy outside of work that gets you into flow state?
Yeah, something, this may not work for everyone, but for me, I took up boxing last year and it's really, it helps me clear my mind. It helps me focus. And it just, keeps me sharp for a lot of the thinking that you ultimately have to do when running a business. So I would say boxing.
Nice. What's one piece of advice you wish you had known, and if you can go back, would tell your 25-year-old self today?
Oh man, I really 25. I didn't know much, but if there was something I had to tell myself now versus back then, it was I always thought either you have to be either patient or persistent. It was one or the other. And now that I'm older and wiser, you can be patient and persistent, meaning persistent in getting to your milestones, but patient in them actually developing. So you can actually use both of those to your advantage in your situation.
Yeah, that's hard when you're 25-year-old. The only thing you don't have is patience, right? You want everything now and you want everything, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Not at all.
Yeah. You only learn it when it's a little older and wiser. What are some of the biggest challenges you're currently facing in order to continue to grow your company, Pricing.io? Meaning, what's keeping you up at night these days?
Wow. I think the number one thing keeping me up at night is finding and nurturing and orchestrating the right mix of talent on the team. And this might be a sign of the times because it's a real tough talent market today. But it's really, you never can invest enough time to really get the right people helping you sort of drive and create value and fulfill the vision. So that's the number one thing is that talent.
Is there any kind of folks you're looking for at the moment right now?
Yeah, like right now we are looking for a pricing strategist role, which is a very impactful role, working with some of the top companies in the world and helping them devise their pricing strategies. It's a lot of fun too. So if you know great talent out there that has a both quantitative and qualitative balance, works great with people and good with math, would love to speak with them.
Okay, yeah. If anybody listening again is looking to connect with Marcos, feel free to reach out and maybe there could be a fit there. Marcos, who or what are some of the best 3 resources? They can be, books, people, mentors, or maybe people you follow in the space who you'd say have been the most instrumental to your success over the last few years.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of smart people in the SaaS space. I will say I've had a couple books that surprised me in terms of how they impacted how I work. There's a book called Unsubscribed, which is for those of you who just feel buried in email and trying to get out from that avalanche, a really great way to manage the flow of information coming in and out so you can be more productive. A second one that really surprised me was Nir Adal's book around Indistractable. He's the author of Hooked, but Indistractable is a great way also to stay focused and not sort of veer too far away from the ultimate goal of what you're trying to drive to as a company. And I've had to give you a third resource, person who I like to watch is Dan Martell, who runs SaaS Academy. And Dan Martell is just a great resource, a great friend, and he is obsessed with scaling. And I just watch him as he develops new ways to scale. And I always take great tips from him. So Dan Martell will be my third one. Yeah.
Dan is fantastic. Yeah, he's great. So Marcos, I read a little bit about your background, right? I think from my understanding, you were raised by a single mom, 1-bedroom apartment in the Bronx. Obviously, lived in the streets, but then took kind of what your mom taught you, and fast forward today, you're program executive director of product management. You're teaching pricing to MBA students at UC San Diego, and coached over 100 SaaS CEOs. Right. So today, how do you define success today? Whether that's personally, business, financial, life, there's no right answer.
No, that's a really good question, because it's different now than it was back when I was 25. I'll tell you that. The way I define success right now is something I think of called positive momentum and energy, right? So what feeds you, what makes you feel good that you're moving forward, that you're growing, versus something else that, say, like sucks the life out of you and you just dread doing. So I always, success for me is just moving forward in that positive momentum way, growing, feeling like you're getting smarter, faster, better all the time, versus dreading waking up in the morning. So that to me is what success means.
Yeah, it could be easy to get spiral out of control, right? Some people get stuck into that cycle and they try to get out. But yeah, as long as you're moving forward in the right direction, you feel listen to yourself. It's probably a stronger feeling of success, and then if you're rich and famous and feeling like you hit your life, right?
Exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah, love it. Thank you, Marcos. This has been fantastic. I really enjoyed learning from you, listening to you, and I'm sure our audience is as well. If people want to get in touch with you, where's the best ways for founders to get in touch with you, learn more about you and your company?
No, absolutely. It was great fun. And to get in touch with me, it's quite easy. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. You could also go to pricingio.com and drop your name in there. Drop me a message. Would love to reach out and talk to you. And in addition, I do have a new book coming out. It is going to hit the shelves in the beginning of July. It's called Street Pricing. If you're interested in learning more about the launch, it goes right into all the different secrets and tips on setting up your SaaS pricing strategy. Just drop your name in there and we'll keep you posted.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcos. You guys check out pricingio.com and make sure to check out his book as well when it launches in July. Thank you so much, Marcos. Appreciate
Thank you for having me, Akil. No, my pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you all for watching this episode and joining SaaS District today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for future episodes where we interview top leaders in the SaaS industry. If you're a SaaS company looking to grow and unlock the true value of your business, get in touch with us at Horizon Capital, and myself or one of our consultants will provide a free assessment to help you get there and hit your goals. If you have any feedback or suggestions for this podcast, please comment down below and help us improve our content for you all. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.